welcome to the Disabled Movie Club. My name is Kendall, and this is Tori, and we're going to go into some agonizing details about movies with disability representation. Today's movie, A Muppets Christmas Carol. If you did not know, I am like the world's biggest Muppet fan ever. And believe it or not, I had not seen this movie till a couple days ago. Which
fake fan.
I am a fake fan. Tori, on the other hand, it's a staple in her household. Mm-hmm. Not only that, she has played Tiny Tim on stage. Not the Muppet version, unfortunately, but you are looking at ye old Tiny Tim.
You are. Kendall will insert pictures here of my actorial debut. Tiny Tim was the first role I played, okay guys? It's a big deal.
If this is your first Disabled Movie Club video with us, we are two disabled girlies and we review these movies with a disabled lens. I have an invisible disability, I have POTS, I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user, and kind of came to terms with my disability later in life.
And I'm Tori. I've had a physical disability my whole life. I have muscular dystrophy, and I've used some sort of mobility aid essentially my whole life. I used a walker growing up, and then I started using a wheelchair in middle school full time.
The Muppets Christmas Carol came out in 1992. It was the first movie that came out after Jim Henson's death. It was produced by his son, Brian Henson. And if you are unfamiliar with the story, it is the story of A Christmas Carol, but with Muppets. It is basically the same storyline. The three ghosts of past, present, and future. Scrooge learns feelings and emotions and realizes that poor people have feelings.
And capitalism is bad.
But with Muppets.
And singing.
And singing. You can watch this movie for yourself on Disney+. We 10 out of 10 recommend this movie for our pure enjoyment factor.
My Letterboxd review was 10 out of 10, no nuts.
So Tori, what was your thought on the disability representation in the movie?
I think it's not great. I think it's hard because I would say that The Christmas Carol is the first introduction that a lot of people get into a person that's disabled. Pretty much everyone, at least in, I guess, Western society. Obviously, other cultures have their other, like, big authors that everyone knows, but Charles Dickens is one that in Western culture is very big. So I would say that pretty much everyone knows who Tiny Tim is. Like, if you say Tiny Tim to a random person off the street,
you know who it is.
They're gonna think, oh, it's that little sickly boy that is from A Christmas Carol.
But this one, he's a frog.
Yes, he is a frog, but he's still sickly and disabled.
Like Tori was saying, Tiny Tim is a pretty iconic character. He uses a crutch and he's not necessarily disabled, but he is a sickly child in the Victorian era. So you kind of get the image. I don't know. We're going to look up and see if the play actually says what his disability is.
Disability. Update, we found it out. He has rickets and tuberculosis.
Oh, that's why he's like coughing all the time.
Oh.
He'll like talk and be like, heh, heh.
Okay, well, possibly. It says, it's commonly believed he had a combination of illnesses, including rickets and tuberculosis, but polio is a possibility. Other possible diagnoses include cerebral palsy and renal tubercular acidosis.
Okay.
But Dickens never named Tiny Tim's illnesses, leaving it to speculate. Some people say the character was based on two people in Dickens' life, a nephew who died of tuberculosis, and the son of a friend who is disabled.
Perfect
That's
combination.
all it says. It doesn't say how said son's friend was disabled, just that he was. So.
And with this movie review, we're going to specifically be interpreting the Muppet version. So, like Wicked, we tried to separate the original storyline versus how the movie producers decided to interpret it. So we do try to keep those thoughts separate. It's helpful to know like what his disability is, but like the idea of having a disabled character is obviously not unique to the Muppets Christmas Carol version. So Tiny Tim uses an adorable little crutch. And if you did not know, in the Muppet version is played by Robin, who is Kermit's nephew. So he's also a frog. He has a little tiny crutch and he coughs a lot. And it's just overall sickly. One of my biggest pet peeves is characters in general, but specifically disabled characters that are only there to make someone feel bad. Because they have no other storyline or personality besides making people feel bad. Disabled people, that sucks. Like, the reason we're analyzing so many movies with disabled representation is purely because there's not a lot of good ones. It's the disabled person is not there to be a real character with a background that's well-rounded. They're meant to be a prop and a purpose. And Tiny Tim is that prop and purpose because he makes Scrooge feel bad. Scrooge's exact words were, "What a remarkable child," as he's coughing over the dinner table and he's standing outside the window. He's like, "What a remarkable child." He's not played by a Muppet, by the way. He's a human. The way I interpreted that is, he's such an inspiration. The phrase, "you're such an inspiration," is still used like every day. Like, I'm sure you've been told that many a times.
I was told that yesterday.
Yeah, so, like, "Oh, you're such an inspiration for working."
Yeah, I literally was like, "Are you checking in for Jollywood Nights?" You're such an inspiration.
And like, Tiny Tim's just living his life, okay?
He's really not. Like, he's actually kind of like...
Okay, but
Sorry.
like, he's just like, that's just him, okay? He's not like, "When I used to not be sick." No, he's just... Yeah. Tiny Tim is just disabled. And maybe that's okay. But apparently it's not, because he's a remarkable child and inspiration.
Well, something I wanted to point out too was Mrs. Cratchit is talking to Bob and Tiny Tim about their little adventure out to the churchyard, because I guess, Bob has to take Tiny Tim to the church to show the church people that being disabled, can be cured by God and whatnot. But that is a topic for another day.
And also doesn't happen in the movie.
True, it doesn't. Money solves.
Yeah, which I actually respect that storyline, that it wasn't God who fixed his illness. It was actually proper care.
Yeah, but there's a line that Tiny Tim says where he's essentially like, "Yeah, I'm really happy that all of those people at the churchyard got to see me, because now they'll have something to live for, essentially. And they'll have something to hope in."
Which is insane for a child to say.
Yeah.
Another thing I really hated is when the ghosts were showing Scrooge what the future will look like. And spoiler alert, Tiny Tim's dead in the future. Why? Because he's disabled. And disabled people cannot live full lives. Now, I understand this storyline is in the Victorian era.
And most people did.
Most people with disabilities and illnesses did die. I can understand that.
But why aren't his other siblings all alive?
It's not my favorite trope, like, because as we progress for more movies, a lot of disabled characters are gonna die.
They basically all do.
Yeah, basically.
Actually, are we going to watch a movie where they live? Anyway.
I love being disabled. I'm so proud to be disabled. And I love watching movies and TV show to see what I can become. I'm really inspired by that.
Kendall. I wanted to speak about when you were talking about how like disabled people are only seen as inspirations. Something that I've really like come to terms with this year is the whole idea of just being okay with being mid and being mediocre.
Yeah.
That's obviously something that people, I'm in my early 20s, so that's something that everyone in their early 20s is coming to terms with. But when you've been disabled your whole life, people in society assume that you're either going to be one of two things. You're going to be this massive inspiration who is always joyful and always happy with life and is always there looking on the bright side, or you're going to be miserable and dying. And there's no in between. As we keep going through different movies that we're watching in the future, that's something that I really want to talk about, of just that whole depiction of like society really only lets you be miserable and very down at life and very down about your disability, or they let you be an inspiration to others when you really can just be living. Like, that's really okay. Like, I'm not doing anything spectacular right now.
You live a life just like an able-bodied person lives their life.
And that is perfectly okay.
Society views disabled people really weird. And I think that's something I wanted to point out as we do these movies, and a reason we started the Disabled Movie Club. The media and society is weird with disabled people when it's literally the biggest marginalized group, and a marginalized group that anybody can join at any time.
I mean, it's 1/4 of the population in the United States.
We will very rarely find such positive, amazing movies that don't end terribly for a disabled person.
I mean, even Wicked, which is what we started out with, and we were saying how we loved the disabled representation.
And we do.
She dies.
Yeah.
Like, she dies. And that sucks. Like, she doesn't die because she's disabled. She just happens to die, but, like, she still dies.
Yeah, and, like, I'm gonna blame that on the original book, the original story, but, like, it still sucks. It still sucks to watch a movie where they did put so much effort into making an authentically disabled person die. And that happens in The Muppets Christmas Carol. Tiny Tim dies. Well, sorta. He dies in, like, the future of, like, if you don't help him, he will die. And then with money and resources, he does it.
They have a whole feast. It's so happy.
When we listed off all the disabilities and illnesses he could have, some of those can be cured. Some of those cannot. So,
well, most of them can't be cured in Victorian London anyway, but
yeah. But he got the resources he needs.
And if nothing else,
it's more than most.
He's here to inspire us all.
With his little tiny crutch.
Oh, there was another disabled person.
There was!
In the movie. It was one of the people that live on the street. I don't think he's disabled, like, for a specific reason, other than we're just supposed to feel bad for him because he lives on the street. But he comes to the feast at the end, so I guess he gets a happy ending too.
He uses a crutch as well, so it's like,
yeah,
you can only have a crutch in this universe. But I do like that mobility devices are used, you know, break that stigma.
Well, in the first song, when they're, like, going through the streets and saying how bad Scrooge is, he's on top of a house.
Yeah.
So I guess he can, like...
Man gets around.
Yeah. Like,
you're still living his life, I guess.
Yeah.
He's homeless on the streets, but...
I mean, he didn't seem that unhappy.
He really didn't.
Except for when he was like, Scrooge is bad.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if he had Scrooge's money, he would also have the resources like Tiny Tim to be cured, but we don't get his background, unfortunately.
But he was there.
He was there, and you know what? I'm just gonna say it. They didn't have to add another mobility device in the back, but they did. And I'm not saying it was good representation, but I'm saying it was representation.
It was there.
This is a stupid thing to say, but I'm gonna say it because I bring it up in every movie that we watch. I like when disabled actors play disabled characters. I'm just gonna say Robin, the Muppet, is not disabled in any other Muppet movie or timeline. So take what you will with that. So out of 5 crutches, how many crutches would you give this movie in terms of disability representation?
I'll give it a 2.
2. I am going to give it a 2.5 crutches out of 5 crutches because I feel like they had something going there. But at the end of the day, I still said, ooh, I don't want to be disabled in this timeline. That brings our average to a 2.25 crutches for The Muppets Christmas Carol, 1992.
Comment down below what your first disabled representation that you ever saw in the media was. I would say mine probably was Tiny Tim, actually probably in A Muppets Christmas Carol, to be exact.
I remember my first disabled representation in the media that I remember. I just cut out me sitting for 5 minutes thinking about this. It was the diabetes episode of Hannah Montana.
Good one.
Yes, that is forever ingrained in my memory. That and Nick Jonas having diabetes. That was crazy as a kid. So anyway, comment down below what your first memory of disabled representation in the media was. That was A Muppets Christmas Carol. We are going through a whole bunch more movies and analyzing them in way too much detail about disabled representation. Also, tell us your favorite movies that we have to add to our list to analyze. Yep. Thank you so much for following along. Again, we got a whole bunch of movies to go through. We really appreciate your guys' support on the channel. We're starting to actually pick up some traction, which is just crazy. So follow along as we dive through some movies and talk about the disability community. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Kendall. That's Tori, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.